Hello everybody, it's Walter, your favorite historian, educator, professor, and social studies extraordinaire. Here today to discuss with you the Emancipation Proclamation, a very famous and important piece of American history that everyone has heard of. The Emancipation Proclamation was a presidential proclamation, an executive order, a decree, an edict, a declaration, which held that as of January 1st, 1863, all remaining slaves in the states that were still in rebellion against the United States of America would be thenceforth, and forever free. Now, the proclamation was issued on January 1st, 1863, and by its own language and force and effect, it did not emancipate, at that point, a single person. But what it did do was set the stage for the ultimate destruction of slavery in the United States. And as the Civil War raged on, it encouraged enslaved people to run behind Union lines, where thenceforth they would be freed, as well as opened the door for former slaves to be received into the armed services of the United States of America. So the proclamation of it in itself laid that groundwork for the destruction of slavery. And as Union armies advanced deeper and deeper into the South, slaves in these conquered areas would then be freed. Now, another thing about the proclamation is that even though it lists slaves to be freed in all the states that were still in rebellion, several states were entirely exempt from its terms, the neutral border states, such as Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, Delaware, and also West Virginia, by the way, as well as areas in certain rebel states that had been reconquered by the Union. And the logic behind that, starting with the border states, was not to entice them to leave the Union as well. As for the areas that had been recaptured by the Union, many of the slaves in these areas had already been manumitted, and for those that weren't, again, Lincoln did not want to incite more disorder and chaos by making the proclamation effective to them. But ultimately, slaves in those areas would inevitably end up being freed anyway, as they were behind Union lines. Okay, so I'm going to read to you the text of the Emancipation Proclamation, all right, what you need to know. Okay, that on the first day of January, in the year of our Lord, 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be thenceforth, and forever free. And the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authority thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of such persons, and will do no act or acts to repress such persons or any of them in any efforts they may make for their actual freedom. That the executive will on the first day of January, aforesaid, by proclamation designate the states and parts of states, if any, in which the people thereof respectively shall then be in rebellion against the United States. And the fact that any state or the people thereof shall on that day be in good faith represented in the Congress of the United States by members chosen thereto at elections, wherein a majority of the qualified voters of such state shall have participated, shall, in the absence of a strong countervailing testimony, be deemed coercive, conclusive evidence that such state and the people thereof are not then in rebellion against the United States. Now I, therefore, Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States, by virtue of the power in me vested as Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States in time of actual armed rebellion against the authority and government of the United States, and as a fit and necessary war measure for suppressing said rebellion, due on this first day of January in the year of our Lord, 1863, and in accordance with my purpose to do so publicly, proclaim for the full period of 100 days from the day first above mentioned, and designate as the states and parts of states wherein the people thereof respectively are this day in rebellion against the United States. The following: Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, and there are several parishes in the state of Louisiana that are exempt from the proclamation, including the city of New Orleans. Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia all right, except the 48 counties designated as West Virginia, which had not been admitted to the Union as a state yet, by the way, folks. It was coming, but hadn't happened yet, as well as several other places in Virginia, all right? Now, again, those are the main points. That's what you need to know. Moving down, and I hereby enjoin upon the people so declared to be free, to abstain from all violence, unless in necessary self-defense. And I recommend to them that in all cases, when allowed, they labor faithfully for reasonable wages. And I further declared and make known that such persons of suitable condition will be received into the armed service of the United States to garrison forts, position stations, and other places, and to man vessels of all sorts in said service. And by virtue of the power and for the purpose aforesaid, I do order and declare that all persons held as slaves within said designated states and parts of states are and henceforward shall be free, and that the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authorities thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of said persons. Now, the proclamation, again, of it in itself, at its first glance and its first issuance, had no force. But as the Union Army conquered more and more of the South, the proclamation was put into full force, and these people were freed as the Union armies advanced. Slavery of it in itself would not ultimately be destroyed by the proclamation, which officially was not the official law of the land, but rather a presidential decree that set the tone as a war measure for the military establishment to destroy slavery as it advanced, and for formerly enslaved people to run behind Union lines and to into the armed services for freedom, all right? And that was certainly done and fully effective, all right? Slavery of it in itself would not come to an end in the United States of America until the ratification of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution in December of 1865, okay? The 13th Amendment had been proposed in Congress, was ratified by the Senate in June of 1864, ratified by the House in January of 1865, and ratification by the requisite number of states completed by December of 1865. The process of getting the 13th Amendment ratified is certainly glorified and dramatized in the 2012 movie Lincoln, by the way, if you've never seen it, okay? So the Emancipation Proclamation was certainly the foundation that led to the adoption and ratification of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which ultimately destroyed slavery and involuntary servitude forever in the United States, except as punishment for a crime wherein the party shall have been duly convicted. All right? So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Emancipation Proclamation, arguably the most famous and far-reaching presidential proclamation in American history. It was done as a war measure, and it changed the whole character of the American Civil War from one that was initially a conflict to simply preserve the Union, but then as well as into one to destroy the greatest sin mankind has ever inflicted upon another, slavery. So I thank you so much for watching this tidbit and brief lecture on the Emancipation Proclamation. If you have any questions or controversies, leave them down below and I will be happy to answer them. Until the next time, take care of yourselves, be safe out there, and in the words of my teaching role model, Mr. George Feeney, believe in yourself, dream, try, do good. Professor Shelton, out.